Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisors of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch for each week. Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management. Hello, mate.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Good. You're serious. You've got your specs out today.
Oh, well, because of the piece of paper you give me, I can't read it. So it's so tiny in terms of the framework we're going to unpack.
Good tradesman never blames their tools.
We got it good. We're back into unpacking.
We are. Money lessons for kids, Ben.
Money lessons for kids. More of that later.
Where is there more of that later? Hey, Paul Clitheroe last week introduced him to a whole new generation of folks, Ben, but resonated in terms of the rankings. So people were listening to him. I hope everyone really enjoyed it. We enjoyed the opportunity to interview him.
Great thrill.
It was a terrific thrill, and he gave so many timeless pieces of wisdom, which is why we called it Timeless Wisdom from the original money guru, Ben. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that.
Yeah, I love the title.
Now, just saying, we want to say a very special thanks to all of our listeners for listening to that, Ben, because I think you and I got as close as we possibly could to hanging out with LeBron James, because in the charts, I don't know if everyone noticed that Tim Ferriss had interviewed LeBron and his trainer. So have you listened to it?
Not to the Tim Ferriss one just yet, but I will circle back to LeBron.
So I think that's the closest we'll ever get to him, Ben, but at least in theory we got nice and close to him being third and they were number one. And also we have spent some time yesterday down in Dimmicks in Collins Street, Ben.
Yeah, in Melbourne.
We got invited to sign some books, which was really great.
Yep.
And in one of those books, Ben, is a little special message. Not only was it signed by us, but it was signed by the faceless Stig.
Wow.
So if anyone is thinking of buying a copy of that, Ben, as a Christmas present for someone, and they're in Melbourne, and they're in the CBD, and
there's only one copy.
There's only one copy, so they've got to be quick and get down there too.
And whoever finds it, can you take a photo of it and put it up on our Facebook? That'd be good.
Oh, that'd be terrific, wouldn't it?
Just so we know who got it.
Just so we can prove that Stiggy actually does exist.
Yeah, there's no gold ticket to any chocolate factory or anything like that, but it's just, that could be a collector's item for maybe 2 or 3 people across the world.
Ben, it is now officially, last time we recorded, it was autumn. Now it's summer.
Oh,
so the season has certainly changed.
35 here in Melbourne today, so
it's going to be a bit hot tomorrow for our Christmas party as well.
Chrissy party. Yep.
But that was a segue, Ben, into the fact that we have actually got a summer series coming up.
We do.
So we've got an interview for next week, a very special guest. She is going to be wonderful. But the following week, Ben,
we're going to Overdrive.
We're going to Overdrive. And we are doing a summer series where not only are we going to come every Thursday at 3 o'clock, but which other day, Ben?
No idea, Bryce. But apparently there's 2 shows a week.
2 shows a week, Ben. So Ivis, it is Tuesday. I haven't asked you this. Will it be at 3 o'clock on Tuesday?
Oh, don't make them wait. Make it midday. Make it midday for both days.
Oh, look at you, Santa Claus, hey? You're Santa Claus in the street.
Deliver early, right?
Have you done your Santa Claus in the street yet?
No. But I've set the house up. I've got some lights out on the weekend.
So summer series will be Tuesday and Thursday from the 18th of December, Ben, all the way to the 31st of January. Beautiful. So we have bitten off more than we can chew, but we will get a couple of episodes per week. And Ben, we are doing a Facebook Live.
We've got a little Facebook Live the next Monday, 12 noon, talking about money management.
Yeah.
So we've had lots of questions for the book, from the book, some tips. So, on the backdrop of that, we're going to do a Facebook Live to answer more money management questions.
So folks, come on in there. Ben said the date, Monday the 10th of December at 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And we would love for you to be in there and bring your questions, Ben.
Just one thing though, Bryce. You won't be able to see it unless you're part of the Make Money Simple group that's inside the Property Couch page on Facebook.
Oh, mate, you've come a long way. I'm so impressed. So there you go, folks. You've heard it here first.
But I've also put some answers to some
of
the questions.
I've been seeing you. They've been very active. Well done.
There's a little bit of resource there as well. So check that out for those people who are getting their money organised, because that's the number one secret to Managing and trapping surplus is organising your money.
I like it, Ben. Monday the 10th at 12 p.m. We will see you there. And I can also announce, Ben, if you are around a television on the 3rd of January.
What?
Is that the day that the cricket starts?
No, there's Boxing Day test.
No, the Boxing Day test, but then the Sydney test.
Isn't it New Year's Day? I don't know much about cricket, but I'm pretty sure it's New Year's Day.
Anyway, so the cricket will probably be on the 3rd of January.
It definitely will be
once they finish, Ben,
yeah,
they can then just kick back, have some dinner, and then tune in. 7:30 p.m. premiere of Escape from the City.
Oh, how exciting!
Now, for those of you who know Jane Hall, who's been on television forever.
Oh, well, she's still young and beautiful.
She is stunning, but she's been on forever, Ben. She is the opening episode.
Okay.
And I'll just give you one little sneak peek. It's in the Byron Bay hinterlands.
Ooh, nice part of the world.
She sees some great properties, so you need to tune in that. And if you're interested in tuning into my episode, Ben, it will be 31st.
So how many hosts of the show, Bryce?
There's 5.
5?
Yeah, come on.
So quick calculation, 3rd. That's like the 5th episode. like, are they bringing it home or are they starting with the gold first?
Mate, whatever my answer here is going to come across poor either way.
You know what? I think they're leaving the best till last.
Oh, in
nice the first round.
Nice recovery by you. There is a thing in television. You start well and you finish well. But
there we go. So it's our job to make sure we tune in to get the ratings. So Bryce is happy, and the executive.
Oh, laugh from all at you too, eh? I just want the listeners to know that my Mindset Minute is being beautifully set up by you two today.
Well, I can also
keep it coming.
Well, it was supposed to come out in August. So they must have done a lot of post-production work on it.
So I'm happy to take that because I give as good as I get, but I just got to say I cannot wait till I can return serve on you, buddy.
No, there's plenty you can do on me.
I'm in the wings, and a couple of things. I'm on ABC Radio this Saturday morning for the Melbourne folks.
Beautiful.
About 7:35.
Good start.
After our Christmas
party.
And then we're on the Today Show the following week. So there we go, folks. Got a few of the housekeeping things out of the way, but my Mindset Minute theme today is speaking directly to Ivis and Ben. So it's from the great Brené.
Pay attention, Ivis.
The great Brené Brown.
Brené.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Brené Brown, Ben, do you remember?
Too familiar with
the Power of Vulnerability TED Talk. We're back in the game.
Now we are. Right,
happy to go slow for you two to keep up.
Thank you.
And she's got a book called Daring Greatly. Now, it's a shout out to my wife because she's been on an enormous growth curve this year, and Brené Brown is someone who she is using as a virtual mentor, and she gave me this one. So it's for you two. There are 1 million cheap seats in the world today, filled with people who will never be brave with their own lives, but will spend every ounce of energy they have hurling advice and judgment at those of us who are trying to dare greatly. Oh, you two could not have set that up more beautifully if I tried. We have to avoid the cheap seats feedback. Hey, thank you.
And you are Mr. Teflon. It just does not stick to you, and that's what we love about you.
There are 1 million cheap seats in the world today filled with people who will never be brave with their own lives, but will spend every ounce of energy they have hurling advice and judgment. And those of us who are trying to dare greatly, we have to avoid the cheap seats feedback. So the context for our podcast, Ben.
Love that statement.
Besides you two then, just give me something beautiful to chat with. It's about our listeners who know that they've put their neck out there, they've invested in property, they've tried to manage their money, they're determined not to get into credit card debt, they're determined to back themselves and have a go, Ben. The people around them who are not daring greatly like they are, they're going to give them the cheap seats feedback. But our advice, Ben, inclusive of you and Ivis, is to dare greatly and to avoid the cheap seats feedback.
And it makes perfect sense. This is the minority group that you want to be associated with. You want to be in this minority group because the facts are that not everyone is going to retire financially free with financial peace, Bryce. It's the minority of people who are, and guess what? They're the minority who are daring bravely.
They're daring bravely, Ben.
They're daring bravely.
What I can say is that there's another quote that I've done here as a Mindset Minute, The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes.
For those of you when I listened to the LeBron talk, Ben, he quoted it. He writes it on, where do you say he writes it? He writes it on his hand or in his bag or something in every game, right? Every time he uses that quote. So if you're not familiar with The Man in the Arena and that one that I just spoke about resonates to you, go and look it up. They both tie in beautifully, Ben. There we go.
A bit of news out there. So obviously, my video recording of the interest rate announcement is now being audio fed into the Property Couches podcast.
How do you feel about that?
So, now people might be listening to it. I've always thought no one listens to what I've got to say, but there's a few people listening, so thank you for that.
Oh, sorry, what did you say?
Right, so here I am, on Tuesday morning. I record that on Tuesday, and it goes out obviously at 2:30 when the rate announcement. So I'm talking up the whole idea of this, truce that's occurred between China and America around these trade wars, right? Because protectionism doesn't work, right? It might work for a short period of time to win some votes, but once everyone realises that free trade lifts people out of poverty and increases, life expectancy and livability right across the globe, protectionism doesn't work. And we're going through this phase. It
doesn't work in a country that has a really high standard of living, which is expensive to maintain. So when in a global market you can get cheaper.
Trump sold them a pup, right? He sold them a pup in the sense that, this is going to make sure that we get more jobs back in America, but it just sort of doesn't work, right? You just got to you've got to compete where you can. Anyway, long story short, market has a pop on Monday, Tuesday, and then I don't call them Donald Trump tweets anymore, right? They're dumps. So it's a Trump dump, right? So on Tuesday he does a Trump dump, which basically sends the market into free fall over there. So it drops by over 3%. Purely because he says, I'm not done yet with this trade war. So
is that hashtag Trump dump?
Well, look, let's make it trend. It's a Trump dump. So the guy needs to have so much self-importance that he puts himself in this. So when the market's moving up, it's me. I did it. When the market's moving down, oh no, that's someone else's problem. It's the Fed Reserve. It's Jerome Powell. He's not slowing down the interest rate increase. So it's annoying for me that he has so much influence on the world. But I tell you what, for someone like him, he loves it. Absolutely loves the importance.
He's drunk on power.
He's drunk on power. Anyway, that led me into some of the data that came out only yesterday on our GDP numbers. So some poor numbers, Bryce. Very much below expectation. So our economy grew by 0.03 of 1% in the September quarter. Now that's our worst quarter of growth since September 2016. It means the annual growth number has dropped down to 2.8%, down from 3.1, right? So that's our trend line. Anything above that, the Reserve Bank have put forecasts out there. Next year they want to be going around 3.5 to 4. So that long-term trend is worrying. We had a good June quarter where we had 0.9% of growth, but this is problematic, right? Now, what's leading it? Right? Where is the story behind the numbers? Household consumption, household spending, and a bit of government sector stuff in there as well. So that contributed the number downturn by 0.5 of 1%. So if we had good household spending and confidence in the marketplace, we would have gone to 0.8 and there's nothing to see here. We've moved on. What's now conversations coming out? I saw Shane Oliver last night talking about the next rate rise is not a rise. It's actually potentially a fall in terms of the... So I've been saying this. If you go back and listen to a few of my interest rate announcements, I haven't been so bullish about the economy. I even say it in this last one that I did on Tuesday, and this is playing out, right? Everything we talk about with the wealth effect, households not feeling comfortable because their property prices aren't going down, the credit crunch that's occurring. So surely APRA have got to start thinking about this, because money moves the world, right? Money makes the world go around. Credit is part of that story. We have gone past the systemic risk that was absolutely in the system in around August of 2015, 2016. We're through the other side of that now. So it's now time to come to our senses, enough is enough, and start thinking about being more sensible about letting the banks run credit. And if the regulators take it too hard post the Royal Commission's findings in February, we could be well and truly on our way to a recession, coupled with some silly policies that aren't pro-economy. They're pro a small minority of people that's going to be problematic for us. So that is important. Now, the other one that came out, which is a big important bit of data.
So for how would you get the listeners to interpret that, all right? So because you have been consistent in building that up.
Yep.
You've now mentioned that it's real.
Starting to happen.
What's your takeaway message for the listeners based on that?
Takeaway message is the December quarter is critical. If we see a poor Christmas, then we are well and truly on our way, because we've got the election happening in May, right? So everyone puts their hands in their pockets until they come out the other side of it, right? Mm-hmm. And what's problematic about that is Labor's not necessarily pro-business at all, right? They're pro-community, services, and no problems there, right? But it's getting the balance right? No use in having a spending spree from both political parties. I mean, they're both going to go out and spend more than they earn, which annoys the crap out of me, to try and buy power. Mm. And the other side of that is we have to pay for it in higher taxes. So it's for me, it is about, and maybe it's another recession that we're going to have, but I'm pretty sure that the economy is not going to move unless they keep doing the infrastructure spending to try and avoid that. But guess what? That's our money that they don't have yet, that they're going to borrow. So I'd like to see the governments, stay within their means, Bryce. So I think the message here is, it's worth noting. We've got to look at Christmas, and then let's come out the other side and see what happens. And if it's deteriorating even further, then I would certainly like the politicians to state their case, prosecute an argument of how they're going to grow the economy moving forward outside of infrastructure spending, right? Outside of what are you going to do in terms of providing incentive for people to employ and those types of things, because that's the story here. So if we start to see some deterioration, and I could be wrong.
What would you like to see?
I'm biased, you know that, so I definitely don't want any changes to the property market, and I want to see common sense prevail in terms of lending policy. The risk that we keep talking about through bad credit lending hasn't materialised, right? So this has been a prevention rather than a cure. But have we gone too far on that? So I'd like to see the lenders being able to lend. Ultimately, that's their business, that's their job. So they should be taking on the risk in terms of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I absolutely know that some of the good findings out of the Royal Commission is they've got to treat their borrower fairly, all right? So some of the stories that came out of that was they were calling in loans, right? Which they shouldn't have called in. It wasn't the other way. It wasn't that they shouldn't have lent them the money. They should, these people, so the credit departments were getting cautious when they shouldn't have been cautious, and vice versa. People absolutely, there's no doubt there was too many investors trying to borrow money at cheap rates, and that did absolutely inflate the property market more generally speaking. So that's the first bit. I'm a big believer that GST should increase, all right, because ultimately that's a consumption tax. So if I'm earning more and I'm spending more, that means absolutely, that should happen. Climate change is real, you morons. So from that point of view, I absolutely want to see, an efficient trading system worked out, so I absolutely want to go to more renewables. I want to see nuclear in the system. Nuclear is cheap. We've got plenty of places to store it. So that and ultimately renewable energy is where we're going to go. And I think this will be, history will show us that this peak period of energy costs that we're experiencing for the next 2 or 3 years will be it. Renewables are getting better, solar panels are trapping more of the power and conversion, so we're going to get better and better at renewables, and it's going to be cheap. So power 5 or 10 or 15 years from now should be relatively cheap if we give the energy companies the ability to, this is their problem. The energy companies aren't investing because there's governments are playing politics. And the politics story is simple, right? The older generation, the people don't want to change, right? And they're getting influenced by the radio stations and the newspapers that they read. And those newspapers and radio stations need those listeners to hang around because that's ad revenue, right? So make no mistake, the agenda here is more economical for those businesses and those media outlets than what it is for the true the true person that they're supposedly looking after. The science is there. It's pretty simple. So that's something that's annoying me. And I think, I agree with a lot of political commentators. Elections are one in the middle. They are not one in, the extreme left and the extreme right. Most of us, the younger generation and the millennials coming through, we want things. We don't want detention centres. We don't want, sort of electricity and these things being a big... We believe in climate change. We know it's real, all right? So we want to see you doing things about that. But that's the problem, right?
Paul Clitheroe said it best last week when he goes, we expect our politicians to lead, but they don't. They're there to get power.
Correct.
And to win votes, and that's the challenge that looking to these people to lead is not going to happen.
So take heed, politicians, if three of you are listening. All right, now I've got some other news around credit cards, but I'll leave that till next week because I want to get into today's show.
And did you know?
Yeah, I've got some did you know.
Oh, good.
I'm sorted for did you know. Mate, I've prepped.
Hey, listen, today was largely on the back of Paul Clitheroe last week was talking, and there's a few people that we've been speaking to recently asking them the question about what did money management look like when you were younger? Mm-hmm. And it seems to be that a lot of that discussion as early as possible makes a difference.
Absolutely.
And when you and I did the stories of our own selves, we talked about what that looked like, and I disclosed that money, even to this day, isn't something that I talk about with my parents. And so I got off the back of the conversation with Paul last week, and I thought, you know what, I actually think that I'm not doing that well in my own household, passing on the information to my kids early enough, because I think, we have a business, I've done this for 20 years, so at the adult level, no problem, but at the kids level. So I did a little bit of research, Ben, and I came across an article from ASIC that had some really good frameworks, and I think the old principle of if you really want to know something, teach it. So I figured, I might give ourselves, I'm speaking for you, I don't know this for you, but we can reinforce some concepts that we can use over the summer to have conversations with our children as we get to see them more over the holiday period, and at the same time have a fly-on-the-wall conversation between you and me for the benefit of our listeners.
Well, I think it's really important, right? So ASIC have a Money Smart website. So don't not confuse with the Property Couch's Money Smart's money management system. So, and they've got a lot of fundamental advice. So what the framework that we've built today is taking a few of those points, but also a lot of our practical experience that we also get. So it's all good to have some theoretical stuff, but we're going to weave them in together and have a bit of a chat about that.
We certainly are. So, but the number one foundation is that you need to prepare your children young. And I've got to say, in the last few weeks, that is something that we have been doing with our children. I've got Jack and Sam; they're 7 and 5, and introducing them to the concept that breaking down the money tree, right, as quickly as we can. And I was in the car with the boys, and I said to them, "Do you know when we go to, because they love grilled, because it's gluten-free, we can eat it."
Yep.
So we go to grilled. I said, do you know when we go up to the machine and we tap on the machine, do you know that there's some money that sits in an account that actually gets removed? And it was silent, right? And their mind was ticking over, and then they started to ask some questions. So it sort of reinforced to me that just that concept alone, for that to land, is something that's a really important thing, because now some of the conversations have been around, do we have enough money for that? How much does that cost? And so I think even just that small conversation starter hopefully will start to have a lasting impact. And I think the good part is Andrew and I are on the same page now, where she also didn't have a lot of that conversation when she was growing up, and she's as committed as I am to impart some of these pearls of wisdom to the boys.
Look, we're going cashless. We absolutely know that's the case. I mean, just the research on the number of ATM withdrawals is falling off a cliff, right? So we talked about that, and Jane tells a really funny story when she was younger, and we get to talk to so many people in so many different forums, so if I'm repeating myself here on the podcast, I apologise. But it was a simple one. She's on Christmas holidays, and the parents are sort of saying, look, we don't have enough money for whatever. And she goes, yes, you do. You just go to one of those holes in the wall, and you just take the money out of the machine.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that where you get your money from?
Yeah.
And not understanding that, obviously as farmers, for them to make their money, they sell their wheat, they sell their wool, and they sell their sheep, right? So it's funny. how the perceptions we have as really young people. I think Jane might have been 7 or 8 at that time when she tells that story. So I agree. I think it's really important that if we start young, in sort of, because our kids see coins around the house in a jar, or they see, they get $50, unfortunately, for their birthday presents from their grandparents, right? Just ridiculous numbers. And so, and Harry's a spender and Jack's a saver. Right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nuts that at that age they get it, right? So Harry,
I wish I had a saver.
Harry, the money burns a hole in his little wallet, and for Jack it's like, I don't care. He's pretty happy just basically, in his own imaginary world. So,
well, I had a chat with Andrea because she talked about the fact that when she was young, the way that her dad used to interact with her was to buy her something, right? So it was this ingrained behaviour, and so she and I had a discussion that I would like her, and she was obviously able to return service. She didn't agree, but I'd like her to know that part of, and I get it, right, when she's at the shops, it's sometimes just easier to buy them something, just to buy yourself a bit of peace, right? And I'm not walking in her shoes, and I don't know what that's like, right? But I just said to her, it's important for me that we teach the kids that consumption isn't a given, right? We're not, even if it's $2, $4, whatever.
Yeah.
I just want them to know that when they do go to the shops, there are times when they don't actually buy something. And thankfully for me, I've got a wife that's on the same page, and she said, yep, she's bought into that, and that's fine. But the fact that what I was observing is they'd go to the shops and they would just have an assumption around they're going to buy something, and then having very little value around what they actually had in their hand, because it was so commonplace that the concept of the fact that we have to work, mum and dad have to work to get that, or whatever the partnership is.
We
for
go
our
away
listeners.
during the middle of the day while you go to school
Yeah.
to do stuff, to try and earn some income,
Yep.
to bring it home. So there's no money tree.
No.
It doesn't grow out the backyard. We can't just replicate it. We can't counterfeit it. And I think, the other story there around managing that story is to tell them that there's wants and needs, right, and explain the difference between those. So as parents, we want to make sure that we're explaining to them that we'll provide you with the needs, the essentials. Everything else is up to your choices and the decisions you make around your money. And I think if you get that foundation right, you're well served. Yeah,
I like it. That's a really key distinction too around that, because mum and dad will provide your needs, and you can save for your wants. But so first of all, number one, we want to impart the message, and on the back of Paul Clitheroe from last week, start young. Start the conversations young. And I guess the first stage of that is talking about invisible money. So help them understand what credit cards are, help them understand what internet banking is, and understand that online shopping still is an exchange. And the more I think about it, I think I really like the generation that I grew up in, because I saw an exchange of money. I saw cash was the norm. I saw the yellow pay packet. My first pay packets were a yellow pay packet where I received cash. So I like the transition. But we're in a different world now, and our kids will probably never really experience that. But starting to talk about the invisible money, because they don't see the money on those transactions, so there's no evidence of any flow. So we need to connect the dots. The cashless economy, that's what we're sort of talking about. And I think that's a good way to segue into the next point, which is opportunities to chat about the transaction that's occurring, right? So understanding that I'm paying money for a product or a service. So, a tangible thing that I can hold, or a service that they're providing. So whether it's someone who's servicing my car, or extreme case of cleaning windows or cleaning the home or something like that, they're providing a service and I'm paying for it. Then if I go to the supermarket, it's pretty clear, right? We're about to exchange money for the goods, and those goods are going to be consumed over the course of time. Well, you talked about the fact that the hole in the wall, if you're still one of those families, or you're still one of those couples, or you're still one of those individuals with children, and you do go up to an ATM, explain what's happening. Explain that, okay, I've just taken $40 out, I've just taken $100 out, whatever the number is, which means that my bank account has now reduced by that amount. So therefore, they understand it's just not an endless supply of money. But there's also an opportunity if you're paying a bill, and if you set up Money Smart's Ben, this can become a bit more invisible because
it's definitely invisible under Money Smarts.
We automate how the bills are paid through the Money Smarts, but it's still possible to show them a bill.
You can absolutely show them a hard copy bill. Yep, that's easy.
And the conversation I'm having, and do you know how, I don't know how often it pops up for you, but you always say you're never going to be your parents, and then all of a sudden something happens, you go, that was my dad. It's like, because I walk around and I'm like, well, you guys turn off the lights, and I just remember that as a kid.
I'm a good one like that. Oh, that's good. My dad's line was, and I've used it. Yeah. Right? Didn't know I was walking into Luna Park. So, like I've used that a couple of times going into the house. Oh, lights on downstairs, lights on. Didn't know I was walking into Luna Park. Yeah. Boys, when you leave the room, turn the light off.
Well, so the way that I've tried to work around not being my dad, right, is I say, because the year before last, we took him to Fiji. And I said, did you have a great time? Yeah, we loved it. And I said, well, here's the deal. If we spend more money on the electricity and we spend more money on the showers, because I got to try and cut down the shower time, it says it leaves us less money. That means we might not be able to go to Fiji. And again, it's the pause after I say that, whether it's landing, which is good. But yeah, talking about invisible money is a foundational.
Now, pocket money. This one's an interesting one, and people might want to understand what number that needs to be, like, what should be paid. Now, I think a good rule of thumb, depending on age, I mean, no one needs pocket money at 2. I don't think they need pocket money before they're 5, right? Because you can start them super young, but I don't know. So what's a good rule of thumb? Well, it depends on what they're doing. So I don't know whether I would just, for being alive, whether I would just give them a certain amount each week. I would align it to the chores that they're doing around the house. And to Scott Pape's credit, the Barefoot Investors' credit, I like what he said once. I heard him being interviewed about preparing the family meal. And he said, no, that's not a chore. I mean, everyone in the household eats. And so if you're doing work to set the table or to clean up or stack the dishwasher or unstack the dishwasher, I reckon it's great that that's not paid for, right? Because we've all got to do that. But certainly putting the bins out, cleaning your room, tidying up, doing all of the things, I think there's reward for effort, and I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, agreed. Our kids, one has to do the top drawer of the dishwasher, one has to do the bottom drawer of the dishwasher every morning. They have to get dressed, they have to eat their breakfast, they have to put their dishes in the dishwasher. They're 5 and 7. We've been doing that for the last 18 months. So Sam was doing that as a 3.5-year-old. Unbelievable credit to Andrea. That was not me. But we are starting to reap the benefits of that. But yeah, I agree. But we've done, I don't know if there's any science behind it, we've done sort of $1 per year. Yep. So $5, $6, $7.
Yeah.
And what Andrea has done is she actually just puts a bit of money into a bank account separate, which is a slight deviation, but only the principle was to teach them about banking, right?
Yep.
So that they could see it. And ultimately that's only a short window of time to teach them that, but they get their own statement, it motivates them. But for the better part, once that foundational stuff, it's all coming back into the offset.
We don't agree all the time, do we?
No.
So I disagree. I've always said, no, I want every dollar sitting in the offset, and I'll just set them up with a spreadsheet that looks like a bank account, because it's technically money in, money out. Now, whether you call it credit and debits, that's how we do it in terms of, because it's like, I don't see the need, and I say this with a view of looking over the hill, and I'm being a little bit sort of, I suppose, looking at the way in which the future is going to be, and this is of high interest to me, and it's what I study in my little part-time frameworks about how money's going to be,
you're fastidious about it.
Yeah, well, I think in the future we won't be running our money. We'll have an AI machine virtual assistant who will manage our money for us, right? And give us insights at will in terms of the consequences of that money movement. Now, whether that's 5 or 10 years away, that's part of the same sort of thing about kids learning to drive now. I think this generation might be the last who get a choice, but after that, why would you need to drive? You know, it's probably not going to be part of your learning process.
Uber pool.
Yeah.
So in terms of that's just something that was important.
Yeah, I think it's good.
But the important thing to say here is it was important to Andrea.
Yeah.
And so for me do I want to win the battle or win the war on that one? Because clearly,
yeah, I agree.
Clearly Money Smarts I'm 100% invested in.
Yeah.
But it's a small amount of money
Yeah.
that's accumulating and it's teaching, and she uses it as a teaching point. And I thought, hey.
Yeah, but don't get sucked into the banking programs that try and through the school systems and all that. That is just bad news, right?
Totally agree.
So if you do want a piggy bank, no problem going to your bank and saying, hey, do you have a piggy bank? They normally will give them to you for free. You know, and of course, if you start with their programs, of course they give them for free, right? But I just walk into a bank and say, hey, you know, my son needs a piggy bank. Do you guys, because they've got their branding on it. They're not silly. So they'll probably give them away as a little gift in a branch anyway. So I think, but the concept of teaching them about money in, money out, I mean, what we're talking about here today, Bros, adults could learn. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just for the kids, but it's like, okay, reward for effort, needs versus wants, essential versus discretionary. It's no real difference, but we're starting them young. And I think what we're talking about here now, you know, opportunity to chat, this is the big bit, right? Sitting around the dinner table and talking about what our choices are for the year and planning out the year, and that's going to cost us money and that's going to cost us money. Those are the big ticket items, right? That we have opportunity cost. If we do this, we can't do that. And then people understand the value of those decisions and the consequences of those decisions, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's again a couple of shout outs to my wife, but she's great at that. I just figure the kids don't need to be involved in that. She's like, yeah, let's have those conversations early. And look, I'm 100% on board now, but I wouldn't have started with that. So it might be talking to some listeners who are a bit old school like me. I've pivoted. And I actually am seeing the benefits of the kids actually being involved with those discussions, so I'm 100% on board now.
Now, so talking about the behaviour thing, we go out for dinner probably at least once a month. We will go out and have a family meal at a restaurant, right? Yep. Now, my boys, you know, are pretty active, pretty loud, still can't quite keep all their food off them or on their plate, right? So it's okay at home, sort of. It still drives me. I
love catching up with Harry because he's just a mini you, right? He's just a mini you.
But I learnt through someone at work here who, because I said when they go out and we say, look, you've got to be well behaved, no yelling, no screaming. Now, one of the solutions is obviously, you know, bring out the iPads and bang. They are quiet, they're not sitting still, they're not running around, running under people, knocking the waitress. You know, I'm not apologising every 5 minutes for their behaviour. But another way, which I learnt from Jamie at work, right, is that once he took Ruby out for dinner and she just wasn't behaving. One morning, no, they'd ordered their meal. He just left. He just turned around, packed up everything, paid the bill and left. And then they went home and had a Vegemite sandwich, right? Now, it's following through on what you say you're going to do. And I don't think this is just about money, but it's just like if we're going to say that and if we roll over, then it's not going to work, right, in terms of that story. So because you're not going to change behaviour because they think, oh yeah, you've threatened us before and now you're not going to follow through. So, you know, penalise them, take some money away from them. If they have good grades, reward them. If they have bad grades, right, all the consequences. And as long as that they're clear on the consequences, I think there's some lessons there for life as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure we've got many parents listening to this, and some will agree with what we just said, and some will disagree, which is fine. The idea here is just to stimulate some discussion and hopefully give you guys some ideas. But number one, start young. Number two, talk about invisible money, and then number three, look for opportunities where you can have conversations around money, where you just don't even think that now is a good time, but they're watching and they're absorbing. And it might be a good opportunity. So Ben, I guess the way that ASIC was suggesting that you introduce this is to do it by age group, right? So what do you talk about when kids are at preschool age? What do you talk when kids are at school age? And then how do you sort of advance them along at high school? And I thought that breaking that up was pretty good. So because I've got one at preschool, one at school. And I certainly don't have any at high school yet, but that'll come at some stage.
Yes, it will.
So in terms of preschool, it was about introducing them that you need money to buy things. It just doesn't turn up. There is some form of exchange happening, and largely an invisible exchange. But you know, there's monopoly. The kids have got play money. You can actually role play and teach them as early as you can. And as Paul Clitheroe said last week, if you're at if you're at school, if you're counting anyway, why don't you talk about dollars and cents rather than just numbers?
Yeah.
So bring it in where you can.
The dollars and cents, you trade time for money. People, you know, they start to understand, okay, I'm going off to preschool and I trade my time for learning. Mum and dad go off to work to trade time for money. You know, that I think is, if they can understand that concept, then the flow on of that is, well, what's the value of that time? And the fact that certain people trade their time for higher or lower levels of money as they go through into probably, you know, the primary school, that concept. So don't try and introduce that too young. They won't get it. If they can't understand the different values of amounts of counting, then, you know, start simple. By just sort of saying, yep, mummy and daddy go off and they spend time there to make money, and that money allows us to buy things.
Spend on things that we choose to.
Yep.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. Don't make it too complex. Make it simple, but understand there's a flow, there's an exchange, there is a trade of time for money in return for something that then mummy, you know, the parents have an opportunity to decide where they want to prioritise their money going.
And that's a good segue into obviously the primary school age, where you can start to, as they're developing their skill sets around multiplication and division, then you can start to sort of talk more complex, you know, and that's probably the opportunity cost conversation. So, Harry, if I've got $100 and your new basketball runners are going to cost me $120, how much more do we need to find for us to be able to buy your runners for you? You know, those types of things are going to be part of that story. And you know, then Harry, this weekend we've got free. I'm going to spend an afternoon with you. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the cinema? Okay, so the cinema is your choice. Do you want to, do you want to go there? That's going to cost us probably about $25 for you to go to the cinema. Do you want to use that money, or do you want to just go and kick the footy down the park or shoot some hoops down at the basketball stadium or something along those lines, which doesn't have a cost, and then you can start to sort of see what that story lives.
Comparing and shopping around, we've actually done this exercise with Jack, where we said, what do you want for Christmas? And they gave us a list. And then it was versus a PlayStation versus a Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
So we asked him to go and get on the iPad and compare prices and compare features and then do a pros and cons for each. So he actually enjoyed it.
And this is the time when husband and wife need to be aligned, right?
Or partner and partner.
Or partner and partner, good point. In terms of, because this is where money conversations go awry, and we're seeing a bit of that in terms of some of the feedback we're getting from the people using the platform, because we ask them a little questionnaire when they come onto the Facebook group as well, and we're noticing the trend of disalignment through partner and partner, right? And that happens in our household too, where the living and lifestyle budget.
My hand's up too.
You know, where it's like, okay, so what's a perfect example right now? So I thought we had enough lights and I thought we had enough Christmas decorations. Right? I think 20 or 30 items is enough, right, that gets stored into a couple of boxes. But because we've now got an upstairs and a downstairs, we needed some lights upstairs. Right, so that's a good example of, right, okay, we've got some lights upstairs now. Now, where does that come out of the budget?
It's a hidden cost in renovating, Ben.
Yeah. And
Christmas lights.
And that wasn't out of my provisional jar, right? You can't sort of move a little bit of money, but coming back to the kids' story, is if you don't have alignment between the parents in terms of the rules that we're setting up, then this is going to be difficult, right? Because as parents, we want to see the joy in our children's face, right? But in some cases, some of that joy is short-lived in the sense of buying them things as opposed to giving them experiences. And I for one, that's a pain point for me in the household.
I can see
it
was in your face as you were describing.
I'm just being careful in terms of how I talk about it, because I get it, right? I mean, I'm someone who's not at home as much as other people are. I run a business. I work probably 8 till 8 most days. On the weekends, I'm there, but it's just important. So I'm guilty of that time-work balance in terms of what I'm doing, but I love what I do. So that's the trade-off for me. Everyone says, "Oh, you work a lot." It's like, you think this is work? This is my passion. It's my purpose. It's what I want to do. So I work my life, and my children work around that, and I make sure I have enough time for them, right? But on the other hand, Jane's passion and purpose is making sure those kids, are wonderfully organised and good-mannered and have morals and have, are adding to society, right? So there's a combination there. So, but I get it, she's had a tough day, or they're not going well, or, there's an ice cream after school or so forth. I don't want that ice cream after school to be a norm. I want it to be, well, you're great at school today. That was great. I was really proud with what the teacher told me about. So let's go and get an ice cream. Mm-hmm. But it is that challenge of, okay, well, I'm going, we're out, kids are screaming, I needed to occupy them whilst I could go and do some shopping or whatever. So, there's a quick little gift and that for me is like, win. It's a quick win. And I'm just putting it out there. I'm not telling you I'm certainly no, sort of behavioural expert around raising children. My God, I'd be getting an F probably for that myself. But I would say that's where the friction in our household was when I was growing up, and it didn't stop right through. So if you can get on the same page in terms of teaching each other about where you're coming from with your money plans and what it means for you in the future, that's the big story here, right? Because if my dad was better at telling my mum, this is what our life is going to look like into the future if we do this better here now and make some sacrifice and delayed gratification, Mum might go, oh, I get it. Whereas Dad just probably passed on by saying, yeah, look, it's for our future. We're going to retire early. Now, and in some cases, a lot of people can't see that future.
Well, it's a good message about buy-in, isn't it? There's got to be buy-in by all parties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, a couple of things around comparing prices.
Yes.
I use an opportunity. We have Netflix, Ben.
Yes.
So when the boys can't find a movie on Netflix and they want to do it on Apple TV, that's an opportunity that I use, and it's an example where Netflix, anything you want to watch on that comes all encompassing. Whereas if I have to go on Apple TV, I have to pay more to do that, and it's actually been something that's landed on them, and I've noticed their behaviour is changing where they request less. Now, don't get me wrong, we watch movies from Apple TV and we pay for them, but the frequency has been diminished so that they know that the value that we provide is in that monthly package.
Does that money come out of their pocket money, or does that come out of the family budget for you?
It comes out of the family budget.
Oh, okay.
For us,
yeah.
Whereas
I would probably say you want that, and that's your choice. That's the I'd take it out of their pocket.
Oh, you mean
money. So paying for the movie for the kids?
For the movies for the kids? No, I haven't actually done that.
Okay.
That's a nice little spin that you do. Well done.
Opportunity.
The other thing to do is remind them to be careful never to share personal details. So because we are going to invisible money, because we are going over the internet, remind them and just slightly expose them at the primary school age that there are people who are good people and there are people who are bad people who will take advantage of knowing that information.
Yeah.
So helping there.
No, I think that's good. And I just want to circle back to the video purchasing thing. The other one is games, right? Apps. That's big, right? So we have a limit on how many games they're able to buy each month. It's usually one.
Yep.
Over Christmas, summer, it's possibly two, because they probably will get a little bit more screen time because they're not at school as much. But they've got to buy them. This is not coming from us, right? So that's got to come out of their birthday money, Christmas money, or the chores that they do. So we're not a regular payer of a pocket money per se. If you do some work, you get good grades, you'll get money into your account, your spreadsheet. But ultimately, that's it. And in some cases, they've got the cash in their wallet, so we don't take that cash and put it in our offset. But in reality, if it's a couple $100, there's not a bad reason to actually put it there. I mean, I want people to start thinking about money in a household sense and in a family office sense, where that they're going to get the benefit of everything that you've done for them and the wealth that you are creating over time. So that's my view.
No, good one. Some good tips there. A couple of things. They've got to be patient when saving. and we've talked about this, got to have some reminders that there are choices when spending. But the thing is to encourage them, particularly as Christmas comes, give you a wish list and then prioritise, because that's life.
That is totally. That's just, and I think Jane and I probably don't plan the full year out. We're going to try that, right? We're going to try and plan the full year out this calendar year.
Yeah.
So our holiday stuff goes, how are you feeling? Like, we come to March, April, and how are you feeling? I need a holiday, I need some break at some point. And then it's like, how are you feeling in June? I definitely need a holiday. We just have to put it somewhere in. And then we get to August, like, well, where's the holiday? Like, all right, put it in here. Bryce is having a time off, I'll go with there. And that's been it, right? So I think we're guilty of a bit of forward planning when it comes to that. So we're going to try that.
Guilty of not.
Yeah, not forward planning, my bad, yeah.
So that's preschool age and that's school age. Then for high school, you can teach them concepts like, Ben, cash is better than credit.
Yep.
This is a big one. The borrower is at the mercy of the lender, particularly as they're going to start to move into student loans, as they're going to start to be exposed to credit cards for the first time, as if they rack up a mobile phone debt. Teach them, let them see the mobile phone bill, let them see what that looks like, so they understand. Paul said it again last week. Contracts.
Yep.
So there's some really good stuff that you can do for high school folks.
I think around the age of 15, so the middle of high school, I want to start talking about investing. Right. So this is where I remember for me, I think I bought my first shares through my dad at around 16. So we were fortunate enough to have a stockbroker who lived across the road from us, of all places in Fundura, which is, so you wouldn't, we're not Leafy East or anything like that. So we had a couple of people who worked in the stock market.
Fundura, for those folks who haven't followed along at home.
Yeah, Fundura. So I started buying some stocks, and I started to understand that these things go up and down, and my money's now making me money. And that was a concept that landed for me, and that sort of led me down the commerce path. So that's why I did economics and accounting, throughout the remainder, and Maths A and Maths B back in the day in high school.
Wow, showing your vintage there, dude. Maths A and Maths B.
Yeah, and for the record, no good at Maths B. Had to drop that in HSC. You're just too hard for this little black duck. That's the story, right? In terms of the work. That's the game-changing piece around the importance of cultivating money, and that's when I started learning it.
And at this point, at certain latter pages of high school, there's part-time work, so they can check their pay slips, Ben. Make sure they were paid the correct amount, and then paying tax. Isn't that interesting? You don't get to keep everything.
Yeah, so starting to contribute to society in a bigger way.
And the final thing for me around high school age is, you talked about investing. Explain what interest is, what its compounding effect is.
Yeah,
and the
compounding
fact
is a game changer.
The interest on the interest is one of the key points.
Noel Whittaker's book for me, that was where I learnt about the power of compounding. $1. When they said, if you put $1 in an account and it compounded and doubled each day, how much money you would have over 30 days, astronomical, right? So I just thought that, and I thought that just blows my mind. So I need to understand more about how I make more money for me.
So there we go, folks. Starting young, talk about invisible money, look for opportunities to chat, and then break it down and get clear on what you're going to say when you're at preschool, what you're going to say when you're at primary school, and what you're going to say at high school to set your children up for adulthood. There's a couple of tips here, Ben, that I thought were pretty good. You rattle off 2 or 3 that might work for you, but for me, number 1 is to let reality be the teacher. So if the kids spend all their allowance, let them feel the consequence of that overspending. So
I like it.
We touched on that. And secondly, delayed gratification. So which is a word that you really need to understand in adulthood. But what does that look like? Well, you could use an example of a frozen pizza versus a homemade pizza, and the quality difference between the two. Now, one takes not very much time to prepare, to get in your belly, but the result of that isn't so great, versus the other one that takes a bit more love and care and a bit more time.
Love it.
But the result is pretty good. So they come up with some creative ways to show your children delayed gratification. Any on that list sort of jump out to you?
Well, I think consumption is going to be a big story here, right? So as young consumers, they will consume a lot, so they're going to consume data. They're going to have more likely going to have mobile phones. So, what sort of mobile phone plans, understanding, the certain types of plans that are available. So fee for use versus ongoing plans. The way in which it's commercialised in terms of wrapping up the phone cost inside the plan. So what's the true cost of the phone? What's the true cost of the plan? That's really your first bit of credit, right? So if you get a 12-month plan from a phone provider, and the parents are going to make the first decision usually, but they need to understand that the full cost of the plan is going to be X over the 12-month period, as opposed to what might be better is a charge card, and then they can really see it working. I think if you try that for the first couple of times, they can say, "Oh, I've run out of credit. So I'm charging again," and all of a sudden I'm feeling that exchange happening.
Like it.
In terms of that. So I think that's going to be a big one for most parents around their mobile phone use.
And was there another one? Because there's just one. There's one that popped up here. Is just critiquing some ads, right? So that's really clever because you tell.
I love it.
What are they selling? How are they selling it? And do they really need it? So just to kind of help them understand, the needs versus wants and impulse spending and what the marketing companies are actually doing to attract your attention.
Yeah.
And whether or not you actually need to. What are they doing to encourage you using, scarcity or whatever their mental trigger is to get you to make that purchasing decision now? And do you actually need it?
Yeah, and look, comparison sites are going to be, they are big now, but I think even into the future they're going to get more and more. If I'm buying, whether it be an Apple phone or a Samsung phone, and it's doing exactly the same service for me, then I've got to look at cost. And so shopping around for that in terms of finding the best deal, and then exploring the second-hand versus brand new, considering that they depreciate in value. So a lot of people think that it's worth buying brand new, but shopping around on eBay, I want a phone, in a competition, I don't need it, surplus to need, whatever it is, they're going to sell that for maybe $100 less than it's worth. So you're getting a brand new phone for less than it's worth. Obviously, there's some shysters out there, so be careful. But if they've got a good rating for sales and sort of a good reviews, then they're relatively trustworthy. I know for our two iPads that we bought for the boys, they're both secondhand. It was just, we were simply not going to buy brand new iPads for the two boys, especially the way they drop them and roll them and crush them and their food on them.
Getting some insights into our home life here, just for the sake of finality here, Ben. So a couple of the things that ASIC were recommending: create a shopping list, research your purchases, set the goals. Plan an event, that's a good one. So give the kids a budget for a barbecue this weekend with the grandparents coming over, and let them make the balance work.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
buy the meat, buy the decorations. Teach them to shop safe online, how to do it, discuss the scams. You talked about mobile use, we talked about the ads. And the last one here is giving, Ben. Giving away to others less fortunate, and that develops some gratitude in your kids as well. So.
Yeah, and especially really timely coming into Christmas in terms of making sure that you're putting a gift under another Christmas tree of people who are less fortunate than you. And I think as part of the Money Smart system that we run, we absolutely have a donations item expense line, and that's there intentionally to start thinking about that in terms of what money have you set aside for giving and paying it forward for others who are less fortunate than you.
So there you have it, folks. Hopefully that stimulated some ideas for you. I fully disclose that this is an area that I want to get much, much better at with my two boys. I feel like we've started, the train has left the station, but there were so many areas for growth for me. So that was really beneficial for me. Hopefully it was for you as well. And of course, Ben and I grew up in families where our parents are still both married. Ben and I are both married to our wives, and we have been for a long time, so we have that traditional view. But if anything, we talked about having a traditional partnership. We're very inclusive. We talk about all relationships, obviously just talking from our own frame of reference.
We're going on a learning journey too. I mean, when we teach people how to manage money, and we've been doing that really since about 2010 seriously in our business, we're learning a lot from others. We learn a lot from our colleagues, but as we wrote the book, we also thought there's some lessons in here about behaviour around money, and that's led us on this exploration in terms of getting better. And in terms of when we started challenging ourselves about what was your money life like, and how did you learn your money habits, that has now led to this, where so some of these things we were doing, we went researching. ASIC is a wonderful resource for that. So, we want to acknowledge where we got some of that content, but it's also we overlay that with our practical stuff in terms of what we do, and it makes sense.
And there'll be some listeners, Ben, who are absolutely nailing this with their kids, who will run rings around you and I, and we would love to hear from them.
Absolutely.
Because I'm thinking future life hack, future money hack. So if you're listening to this and you've got some tips that you'd like to share with me, I well and truly want to hear from you.
Because we'll share them with the community.
Info on the property gate. So if you've got some tips for how you help your kids, please send them in, and I will definitely include them as a life hack in the future. So there you go, folks. Money lessons for kids. Hopefully that helps this side of Christmas, given that you're going to be spending probably the most time you will with your kids at any point throughout the year is over the festive season.
And it's probably the time that they're going to spend the most of the money,
cash,
or ask you for more money. This is the time, the holiday season is by far, Dad, Mum, can I have some money for ice cream? So it's like, okay, this is a good time to sort of say, we might start a new system in the new year, but every time you ask me, I'm going to write that down and we're going to have a conversation around that in the new year, potentially, if it's a bit too hard to implement it right now.
Some life lessons, so that's very, very good. Hey, my life hack today, Ben, is exactly the same author as I did for my Mindset Minutes, Brené Brown. She followed on to say she could get clear on whose opinion of you matters. Even if it's hard to hear, bring it in and hold it until we learn from it. So that we talked about the cheap seats before, about don't let the people in, but be very clear on who you let in. So I've got to say, there's people around me every day in this building who I respect, and their opinion matters. So I'm very clear about that from a business perspective.
So even when we're having a go at you, you know that that's only a bit of jest,
it's
don't
like,
you?
It's like the old, when you're a kid, you run around the playground, you liked a girl, and you couldn't say that you liked her, so you just pushed her. It's kind of like that, isn't it? It's just your way of saying
exactly,
we're mates.
That's my sign of affection for you.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's true.
Don't worry, I felt the man love. Don't worry about that. And I was questionable about you. What's going on over there? So get clear on whose opinion of you matters. Even if it's hard to hear, bring it in until you hold it from we learn it. Business-wise, but also in your personal life, Ben. Plenty of people have got opinions. Make sure you're clear on who you let in. Did you know, Ben?
Did you know? Well, obviously we're into a new month, December, summer, but obviously we get the results from CoreLogic in terms of what's happening across the broader market. Now,
it's been interesting.
If you had seen the headlines, they were like, worst since GFC market.
One of them talked about the 80s recession in it too.
Oh yeah, so it's all this gloom and doom, right?
Come on, if it
gloom
bleeds,
and
it
doom.
leads.
So nationally, house prices slipped by 0.7 in November, right? So overall, from the peak of the market to where we are today, we're down 4.2%. Right, that's nationally. Yep. And some of these are levels that we haven't seen since December 2016. Now, here's the deal though, right? So if you're thinking like that and saying that the market's on this absolute diabolical story, what about the story behind the numbers? So here's what I went and did. So 55% of the value of our assets are Melbourne and Sydney, right? So if those two capitals are going down, it's going to skew the overall national result, isn't it? But here's another point that people probably didn't quite highlight, that if we actually look at the month of November...
You're not going to say there's some positive in there, were you?
Oh, just hear me out.
Come on.
5 of the 8 capital cities, Bryce.
Come on, that's over 50%.
That's 62.5%.
Right.
Of the capital cities are growing in value. Now, if you just read the headline,
don't believe
you'll be
thinking, the headline says it's Armageddon.
Yeah. So Sydney down 1.4% for the month, Melbourne down 1%, Brisbane up 0.1%, Adelaide up 0.1%, Perth down 0.7%, Hobart up 0.7%, Darwin up 0.7%, Canberra up 0.6%. Right, so all of a sudden, and then quarterly, how many of the property markets are up and down for the quarter? 5 of the 8 are up and 3 are down. So, yeah, Sydney down 2.8%, Melbourne down 2.4%, Perth down 2.1%, but, Brisbane up, Adelaide up, Hobart up, Darwin up, and Canberra up. So, I just want to make, and Canberra's the hottest market annually. Hobart, my bad. it's a very small in terms of capital size or city size. They're not very big, so not necessarily so thrilled on Hobart and Canberra anyway. But the point I make, 9.3% for Hobart, Canberra's up 4%, Brisbane's up, Adelaide's up 1.4% for the year. So these are growing. These are centres that are growing, which means the bulk of the accommodation in that area is actually growing, not retracting. And that's just the story. But we don't like, we like the headline, right? The property market's crashing because our two biggest cities have had amazing growth and are now coming off the top. Well, as
the ambassador for, coming from Perth, for the ambassador of the non-big capital cities, no surprise here, Ben. It's like Melbourne and Sydney think they're America. No one else exists outside of Melbourne and Sydney. Hey?
Well, so just a bit of, did you know that, in fact, 5 out of the 8 capitals are growing in value at the moment. It's only 3 that are not.
Good, did you know? Hey, what's with? Am I allowed to call you granddad now? You get your glasses. You put your glasses on. You put your glasses off. You put your glasses on. It's like old granddad over there.
Well, do you want me to just leave them on the chin, on the end of my nose, like Santa Claus,
mate?
My eyesight, my close-up eyesight is failing me as I get older, Bryce.
Yeah, well.
And apparently that's something that happens to us old blokes.
Oh, I'm going to suck on your Foss now. Is it all right if I sign off? Ben and Foss bring you the insights. Bryce and Foss, I can't even get my jokes right, Iris. Can't even get my jokes right.
He's hopeless at returning serve, isn't he?
Mate, I took it easy on you, mate. You old silver fox over there with your granddad glasses. I could have done that, but now you're...
Well, you just did, and that's good.
Well, I was a bit gentler.
I love you too.
Exactly. Oh, I wonder if all the Hobart people have already turned off. You offended them. Canberra people turned off. Now the people are awkward with the man love. So, but no, that was fun. Hopefully that was helpful. We will continue to report on how we're going through 2019 with imparting these messages to our children, Ben. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Very true. See you next week, folks. Want more great content from The Property Couch? If you haven't had a chance to go back to the foundational episodes, we got good news for you. Go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and check out the free binge guide, which gives you the insights you need from the first 20 episodes, where we unpack the foundational pillars of the insider's guide to property, finance and money management. It's completely free and available now.